Hello my friends, what you may see here is the hunt on the Russian airplanes, military aviation. For example, this is MiG-29 fighter jet that was kaboomed in Kacha, Crimea. The operation was conducted by Ukrainian military intelligence and as you may see, the plane was hit. The canopy was open, there is a ladder, which means that the airplane was in operation. I also see some sort of the missile over here. That means that this airplane was not staying there as a dead cargo. No, it was in service. So it's a very nice hit in this case by Ukrainian drone operators. And for me it's kind of interesting because Russia usually uses this airfield for their helicopters and also for BE-12 airplanes. Those are radio surveillance, anti-ship and anti-submarine aircraft, and Russia has many of those. The fighter jets are usually placed in Belbek, more to the south, around 10 kilometers. Also on territory of Simferopol airfield, Ukraine hit one of the big radars, which is used for surveillance to define the objects flying by hundreds of kilometers. It seems like not any longer. At least it was damaged. Yeah guys, in today's video we're gonna discuss Kaboom's frontline updates and political situation around Ukraine and not only. Buckle up! Let's go. I think it's important to continue with the front lines. Mirnograd and Pokrovsk direction, we have some of the changes for the last 24 hours. It was yesterday, it is today. Well, actually we have two of the updates from the deep state military map. It was the day before yesterday, it is yesterday and it is today. A little deviation of the front lines over here. Here it is not Ukrainian counterattack, it's just the clarification of the exact positions. And overall I wouldn't say that there is too much changes happening. For the last 3 days, Russia put lots of the flags in Pokrovsk and their small sabotage groups were spotted even further away to the north. But again, it happened 2-3 days ago. Ukrainian army continued to operate within the city perimeter too. And I have the information from the reliable source that the situation for Ukrainian armed forces in Mirnograd especially, it deteriorates day by day. And the Ukrainian forces in Mirnograd already report about encirclement because Russian forces captured the railway hospital and also some other place, Sopolive, it called, maybe some sort of the industrial area, which is very close to very important crossroad that is used for evacuation. Our soldiers say that because Russians captured two of those points, the defense of Rivne is close to impossible. Yeah, the report says that the further holding of Rivne is pointless, so our guys from the 35th Naval Infantry Brigade withdraw to Svitle village. The further use of this road, which is the exit road, is impossible until Russians are being pushed from Sopliva village. Until then, the only logistics option remains through drones. So it's very, very late to keep our guys out there. They should have been evacuated weeks ago. And now there are two options. As they say, Ukraine should concentrate the forces into attack towards Sopliva village to unblock the route. We'll attempt to break out this encirclement. Actually, it's almost full physical encirclement already, because that's the only evacuation route possible. A proper thing to do here is to use small infiltration attempts to go further with the small attack groups. That will minimize the losses for Ukrainian armed forces, but still there will be losses. Because Russia already is presented there with infantry forces and also they control the area with their drones and artillery. Sometimes they also use aviation gliding bombs, including Mirnograd itself. Guys, I'm not reading it out from the Russian channels. Those are Ukrainian analytics, and they share what our soldiers are definitely saying, like actual situation on the front lines. They also write that through the increasingly widespread culture of lying in the Ukrainian armed forces, and definitely with Syrsky it's like that, the Ukrainian units surrounded in Mirnograd began sending the information packages to journalists and analytics groups 3 days ago. That's why we have this information. Describing the real situation and providing video evidence to confirm it. The military groups presented in Mirnograd wanted to pressure Syrsky and the general staff, forcing them to take appropriate actions. The analytic Thorkill also shares this information with the explanation, and here is the map. So 35th Brigade 25th, and there is the presence of the Russian forces, a very small bottleneck, and it's impossible now to evacuate using this route without losses. Yeah, that's the last road that connects Mirnograd, but the presence of the Russian forces is very close to the crossroad. Here they're also very close, which means that basically Ukrainian armed forces are almost fully physically encircled. We may say already about encirclement of Ukrainian army. And what is shown here is the gray zone may not be so optimistic. I mean, deep state military map, they have lots of the gray zones, but in fact there could be different situations. We understand that Ukrainian armed forces, well, they're in a huge risk here. So if our guys, they're imprisoned, captured by Russians, or in the worst case, unalived, well, it's gonna demoralize Ukrainian soldiers in general and Ukrainian society. And you may understand why it happens. There was no order for our guys to leave this area. Now it's kind of late, yeah? Alright, next we go to Zaporizhia direction. Here we have plus minus news, so positive and negative. The positive news is over here. Yes, you see Russian flags in Dobropilya. This is Dobropilya of Zaporizhia Oblast. And why this is positive? Because those flags, they didn't keep up for a long time in this area. All of the Russian infiltration attempts were repelled together with Russian infantry. It was a standard Russian flag operation that was filmed just for the propaganda purposes. They sent some of the Chmobiks there. Usually those drug addict alcoholics, they go somewhere for those missions. Russia doesn't want to waste capable forces for those flag attacks. But later on in the same area you see our guys with the Ukrainian flag, so Dobropilya is still under Ukrainian control. There was an attempt for Russians to get it, but it was not successful. Good news! The presence of a Ukrainian army was spotted in entire Dobropilya, not just near to that hangar building. But Russians still moved towards Gulai-Pole, so it was 2 days ago and it is today. Just a little advancement over here across the road with the main forces. But the fight in the settlement is not happening yet. Russians continue to use aviation gliding bombs, but Ukraine tries to target Russian positions with the help of the drones. There was the presence of the small Russian group very close to Gulai-Pole, but Ukrainian drones dealt with that, as you may see. One more update we have from the deep state military map, and it is happening in the Kharkiv region. There Russia also propelled a little forward, I would say not just a little, but they crossed the river of Vovcha in Vovchansk. So it was yesterday, it is today. The Russian armed forces are already presented in the southern part of Vovchansk, and this town is important for defense actually. And before, I guess in 2023, Ukraine was capable to counterattack, pushing Russians away across Vovcha river, and it was status quo there for extensive period of time, for more than a year. But recently Russians intensified attacks, probably they sent more reinforcements. As for the front lines updates, mainly that's it for today. And let's continue with Kaboom news. This is Nevinomysk, Stavropolsky Krai. This is the Russian MiG-29 fighter jet. Today I already spoke about this kind of the airplane at the very beginning of the video, but nevertheless it was not the target. The main goal for Ukraine was to hit the factory for Russian fertilizers, Azot factory it's called. It is located in industrial park. This factory is also used to produce components for the Russian shells. Those components are added to powder to make it burn faster and with more force. And the plane is not flying, it is there as a monument.
Нихуя не видно, но там прям дымочек нормальный.
Oryol Oblast, this is the thermal power plant that was kaputted the last night. Yeah, something really happened there. Well, I wouldn't say that there were lots of the kabooms the last night, but sometimes we just do not obtain enough video and audio information from the eyewitnesses, because Ukraine also hits Russian military infrastructure, and in most of the cases, Russian bases are a little further away from villages and cities. And now about politics. Putin, as you see with his Botox smile, is visiting India. Modi met him right from the airplane, and Putin even gave a short interview to Indian press. And guess what he was telling about? Let's check it out.
The first capital, according to history, was in Novgorod in the northwest.
She was like, look at her emotion. Like, what are you telling, guy? What are you telling?
Later, the federal status moved to the city of Veliki Novgorod.
As you see, the same bullshit Putin tells in every of his interview to the world press, like he did with Tucker Carlson and so on. And that history variant is presented only in his head. He is crazy, and he started this war because of this craziness. He wants to occupy Ukraine, and not only, and he wants Russia to regain all of those lands. That's his purpose. It's not about Donbass or something. That is what Americans are now pushing Ukraine to give up, yeah? Trump and Witkoff, Kushner. They need to listen to this crazy guy. Yes, he's unhinged crazy, and he started this war because of this Russian chauvinism, cockroaches in his head and in the heads of some other Russians who vote for Putin and who support this so-called special military operation. Putin is not going to stop, and the failed peace agreement shows that. By the way, my friends, I have another channel. It's called Captain Dennis. You may check it out in the video description right below. There I tell about American politics, about general news, drama, some of the hiking, cooking videos, and today I said about the peace deal failed. What is next? Kind of the long video. Just me talking to the camera, my thoughts. So if you are interested in that kind of the content, you may subscribe, and also I stream there almost every day. All of the legacy media sources already called those negotiations a failure, like for example the Times, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. And they are saying what I'm telling to you for a very long time, that it is not possible to influence Putin with just limited sanctions and with just limited Ukrainian military support. Russia is encouraged. Moreover, those Witkoff peace talks, they showed that the United States is willing to cooperate with Russia directly, and they're not willing to cooperate with Europe. So Europe is betrayed. And President of France, Macron, mentioned that. He said that America betrayed Europe and Ukraine. It was a private conversation between Macron and Merz, but it leaked to the press. Now we know it. From Spiegel, I guess. Spiegel published that. Yeah, it was published by Spiegel, and Macron, Merz, European politicians, they were shocked about this deal, and they called Zelensky, telling about the possible threats coming from both Russia and the United States of America. But you know what? The United States, they have just limited influence on Ukraine and absolutely no influence on Russia. So Trump made just blah, blah, blah. That is what he continued to do. Like, for example, yesterday he was asked the question about the peace deal, where he said it went well. Witkoff said it was constructive. Witkoff believes that Putin wants peace, which is bullshit. And the same story, if I were the president, there would not be the war. It's another bullshit, another bullshit. The real thing that for the White House there is no any standard for what is good, what is bad. There are no allies, just business partners, and they want to have the partnership with Russia, which is unhinged crazy, and they don't see the real threat coming from Russia as from aggressive state, as well as from China, by the way. One more interesting article: Ukraine peace plan has only led to Putin losing his fear of Trump. 100%. Trump is played by Putin very easily. He is like this small boy. Alright, also we have kind of the interesting remark from Putin himself. He says that Russia will continue its liberation operation, like to liberate Donbass and Novorossiya. Novorossiya. It's kind of interesting, because what Russia calls Novorossiya is actually bigger than Donbass. It is presented just in a sick fantasy of Putin and those Russians who think like Putin, and there are different maps presented, like this one, for example, with Kharkivska Oblast. There is also the one without Kharkivska Oblast, without Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. But what is 100% that this imaginable Novorossiya is way bigger than Donbass. So Putin is not going to stop. His goal is to annex all of those territories, including Odessa Oblast, Nikolaevska, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkivska, and maybe more. He wants to annex those territories, make Novorossiya as one more oblast of Russia, and the rest of the Ukraine he plans to make some sort of the slave state as Belarus, for example, with the Russian puppet government in charge. That's his goal, and he's saying about it openly. Just listen to Putin.
New Zealand and Australia, and they are not in NATO. They are close NATO partners.
So New Zealand and Australia, they joined this Pearl program to purchase American weapons for Ukraine. This is awesome. At the same time, there was the news that Italy will not take part in Pearl, but Italy has direct military support for Ukraine, and Italy was never the part of Pearl program. But it doesn't mean that Italy will stop supporting Ukraine, no. And also there is the probability for Greece to join into the Pearl program for Ukraine, which is also nice. And again, this prick, the Belgian Prime Minister, he wants to keep Russian frozen assets because Belgium earns from that. Before he said that confiscating the Russian assets may harm the peace deal, now he says that Russia will not lose and called the claims of the Russians' defeat a fairy tale and total illusion. Reminds me Orban. He warned that Russian assets must be returned post-war and said Moscow threatened Belgium with eternal retaliation. If confiscated, I wonder whom they afraid of. Maybe Medvedev? Because it is Dmitry Medvedev once again who wrote this stuff. If the crazy European Union does still frozen Russian assets for a reparations loan, we may view it as a casus belli with all of the relevant implications for Brussels and company. Then these funds may have to be returned not in a core but as real reparations paid in kind by Russia's fallen foes. That's the diagnosis already, but it definitely shows that Russia afraid for its funds. And guys, it's not just about this Belgian Prime Minister, it's about European Union in general and all of those officials, politicians, bureaucrats who don't give a fuck about what is happening in Ukraine really. With this partial military support of Ukraine and how they're afraid to escalate, they're bringing this war closer to European Union itself and in NATO. Unfortunately, there is pretty much high chance for it to happen pretty much soon. I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like it's inevitable. Then Putin sees that Europe is damn weak and America is damn stupid. Again, I don't mean people who live out there, just politicians, managers, leaders, you may call them. Yeah, they are out of reality. I hope this ritual reduces the lifespan. And with that, my friends, thank you so much for supporting the job that I do here on my channel daily. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible. So if you want to support the job, please join me on Patreon, the link for it right in the video description below, or on membership. You may press the join button somewhere over here. And guys, support me only if you can, if you are willing, and if you have this opportunity. If not, it's okay. You may just press like to this video and also subscribe for the channel to boost the video in YouTube algorithms. That also helps me a lot. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.